Quarterback recruiting dominoes are about to fall. We're going to talk about FSU's major miss and big wide receivers. Are they now a prime position to recruit?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're going to talk about the big quarterback dominoes, including Jared Curtis making his decision this upcoming Monday. Dawgs, Ducks, we're going to find out. We're going to discuss him. We're going to talk about Ryder Lyons, Landon Duckworth, and several other key guys. It is decision time for the elite quarterbacks. Florida State had one of the biggest recruiting misses, and I don't even know how long. We're going to have to deep dive a little bit on what's going on at Florida State and why are they struggling to keep some of the top talent that's close to them home. And to finish up, the new position in college football that seems to be getting more and more important, the big receiver or the flex tight end, however you want to label it. To help me break all of that down, John Garcia Jr. of Rivals.com. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brian. It's a busy time coming up, and it's pretty exciting. A lot will change in a matter of days, really.
Absolutely. Let's start off with Jared Curtis. Monday, May 5th, he's going to announce between the Ducks and the Dawgs. You know, Oregon and Georgia have been after him forever. I don't think I really have any prediction at this point. Everybody's had something. I've kind of given up on figuring it out. He's going to announce. But big picture, I mean, if you want to give your prediction, fire away. But how does this impact other schools and what happens, Georgia, Oregon, et cetera?
Yeah, I think everybody's watching this one really closely, particularly down south in SEC country. I think clearly Georgia has – on multiple fronts here, positioned themselves very well. On the front end, look, you had Curtis committed early on. You've built those relationships. You're going to go in home again here before the final decision comes off after the weekend. You feel good about it, but there's some due diligence that Kirby Smart's staff has done with the second group of quarterbacks. And I grouped them together because it still really does feel like Georgia's all in on Curtis. You know, that is certainly the priority one, topic one, line A1 on the chart there. So I don't think that they've pivoted heavily to the second group of quarterbacks, but they've done enough to keep this group interested. This is the Landon Duckworth, the Jaden O'Neal type of group where there is at least some time left before those guys make a final decision, and they could pivot there if Jared Curtis does pick the Oregon Ducks. So I think there's a lot of eyeballs on this one nationally, but certainly down in SEC country because some of those other guys are either committed to or considering multiple SEC programs. So I think this is a monster domino, no matter how you slice it. And, you know, this could just be my algorithm. This could just be spur of the moment, but I am seeing a little bit more Georgia coverage of Jared Curtis's every move. And that doesn't always tip your hand, but I do think the confidence, the familiarity with Georgia, the proximity to home, I do think the Dawgs have something to stand on here. And they could say, hey, come be the quarterback that, you know, that we haven't had. Come be the guy that gets us over the hump. As to where at Oregon, cross country, Big Ten, different conference, less familiarity, you'd be more of a maintenance guy. Hey, maintain what we've been able to do with Bo Nix, with Dylan Gabriel, et cetera. So I think it's a fascinating, you know, decision that's still on deck. And Oregon's going to go in home as well this week. So there's still some conversations that are going to be had intimately between, you know, these coaches and this battery of decision makers in Jared Curtis's camp. So fascinating individually, but even more fascinating for us on how it affects everybody else. I think in SEC country, heavy impact, but even all the way across the country, you will see an impact. How does this affect Ryder Lyons and his decision-making and his spot, right? You know, he's really the last elite West Coast quarterback that hasn't come off the board that's considering these schools. Luke Fahey's out there as well. Smeagol just came off the board to Michigan. So I think that ends that Ryder Lyons to Michigan conversation that was sparking up just a little bit a few weeks and months back. So we're getting some answers, but Curtis is obviously the big domino that will create a lot more answers and clarity as we get closer to the bulk of official visit season.
I also think that Landon Duckworth is very important in this because Georgia's, I think, still recruiting him.
Yep.
Unless something's changed, then you also got Jaden O'Neal, who, let's be honest, he's technically committed to Oklahoma. I think the chances of him signing with the Sooners pretty low at this point. That's another school that Georgia, like, they're involved with him. Like, I don't know where it's all going to go, but there's going to be a big whirlwind, and it's going to happen real quick. But Jared's the beginning of it, so you're absolutely right. So I have no idea where Jared's going. When he picks, I'll know, just like everybody else.
He might not know right now. I mean,
that's
you imagine these coaches flying in and sitting down with you. It's not a, hey, let's try on this jersey and hang out and talk a little ball casually. No, this is like I'm sitting down face to face with the guy who might be calling my plays next year or in charge of my playing time, and he's going to give me a little bit more intimate of an approach there. And I think when you start involving the parents and the other coaches, and it kind of expands from there. It's a lot. It's a lot for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old to consider because, as again, the NFL draft has taught us again last week, where you go, that fit, it matters so much. You know, are you going to be a transfer portal guy and maybe take longer in your development and be a 5th, 6th-year guy like a Cam Ward, like a Shedeur Sanders? Or could you be a guy who kind of gets it right on the front end of this thing and gets playing time as an underclassman and becomes one of the household names in college football, which now has more value than it ever has. So it's really critical, obviously, for these quarterbacks to make the right call. And you understand Curtis's sort of toe in the line between both programs, both great programs, obviously.
Absolutely. There's still a few other guys that, real quick. I think a guy that has gone under the radar, and I'm still surprised by this because he plays at Grayson, a program you and I know extremely well. For those who don't know, Grayson High School is just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. They won state title last year, and the quarterback in question is Travis Burgess. We both thought Auburn for the longest time. Auburn thought they were going to get him for the longest time. That may not be the case anymore. I know Wisconsin made a run at him. I don't know if the Badgers are still really a viable option. But Bill Belichick in North Carolina, 6'5", 200-plus pound quarterbacks don't grow on trees, and he fits the profile of what Bill is like. I'm not saying the kid's Tom Brady before anybody asks. But Travis Burgess is underrated. I saw him at Elite 11 just outside Atlanta at Gainesville High School recently. He was really good. Is this the kind of kid that we're going to see more teams go to because they want to develop a high school kid? We talked a little bit about that off air, getting at least one, if not two quarterbacks, because, again, size. He's got a nice release from a prominent program that doesn't hurt. You want to attract other kids from Grayson. What do you think the reasoning is, though, that he's not ranked as high as some other guys maybe around the country?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot for Travis ahead. You know, look, the profile's great. Like you mentioned, massive kid. I mean, wherever he's at, you're like, who's that? Oh, that's the Burgess kid. I mean, just physically stands out wherever he goes, and a multi-sport guy. I mean, this guy's a state champion in basketball as well. So I just think he has a little bit of a more unconventional path towards, you know, this status as an elite quarterback. And again, this group is loaded in 2026, and we sort of get lost in the Faison Brandon, Ryder Lyons, Jared Curtis grouping at the very top. So the next group is sort of jumbled together, but it's a really big and deep group. So I think Burgess is kind of a product of those elements. And I also think when you're in Atlanta, when you're at a powerhouse like Grayson, and it's not a Georgia Tech type of recruitment, Alabama type of recruitment, I think there's sort of the industry kind of pivots away from you from a coverage standpoint, even though, again, history can tell us a lot of great state of Georgia quarterbacks went outside the state and had plenty of success. Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson come to mind immediately, but there's so many more who took that path. But I do still think, and it happens in other states relative to the power programs close to home, if you're a Birmingham kid and Alabama's not on you, the media is not going to push in that direction. Same thing in Florida. You're a South Florida kid, and the Hurricanes aren't beating down your door. You're not going to get the same coverage as the kid who is getting that. So I do think there's a little bit of that, and it's something subconsciously that goes on. So I think the late development, the multi-sport stuff, the clear, I think technical progress he needs to make, and then the surface level stuff with Georgia, Alabama, those powers not being, pushing for a guy like Burgess. All of those factors contributed to maybe less coverage to this point. But like you said, at events, he's starting to really hold his own and compete with those elite guys, and his profile outside the state has risen. Auburn, as you mentioned, has been there for a long time. Wisconsin made a run. NC State has made a run. And now North Carolina looks like the clear, true competitor to the Auburn Tigers. And there's certainly some buzz and momentum for the Tar Heels to land, this commitment. I think, again, Curtis, some of these other decisions will come in first, but it's not a smaller deal because of that. Burgess is a bigger, more – and you could argue, compared to a Jared Curtis, Burgess is a bigger, more physically impressive prospect, and he has certainly played better competition to this point. So it just depends on what you focus on and what you factor highly in the quarterback evaluation process, which, by the way, is a mess at every company, every NFL team, every college team. There's so much hit and miss. 50% is like a good rate, a hit rate, at the quarterback position. So it really is a preference kind of deal. But I do like, from the North Carolina and Auburn standpoint, I do like that Burgess comes in with a big arm and big athleticism, because I think when you start to, split hairs and scrutinize the quarterback position, I do think there is a default that falls positively towards the truly mobile quarterbacks, because there's so much there in the margins they can do to not only compensate for maybe a lack of passing prowess or consistency or accuracy there, but look, they can get you out of jam when your O-line's not playing as well, when your running game's not working as well. They can get you out of those jams. So they really, schematically give you so much more in the margins. And I think, again, going back to the draft and trying to learn from the highest level, the best and biggest scouts, in the world, in this sport, they default to that mobility. I think that was why Cam Ward was the number one pick and a runaway number one pick, and also why Jackson Dart was the riser. He was the late riser who commanded that late attention, and obviously went earlier than a lot of people expected. I think people default to that mobility with those guys because that, worst case scenario, they can get you out of a jam more so than, a Shedeur Sanders or a guy who's a little bit more pocket-based can. So I think those are all really positive elements in the Travis Burgess evaluation. And once he does, pick a college and stick it out at that program, I do think he's a guy who's going to have a chance to make a lot of plays when he does, finally, get his number called.
Yeah, Travis Burgess has a world of upside, and he's a great young man from a program that's used to playing against quality competition. You and I have talked about that. Quarterback, if I have to lean on any one thing, did you play against anybody in high school, just so I have more to grade? I know that's kind of a small point, but yeah, I think it matters. So I think Travis Burgess has a chance to be a really good college player, maybe even more than that. When we come back, we're going to talk about a recruiting mishap for a certain school in the state of Florida that happened here recently that I don't think it's a good trend for the Florida State Seminoles. That is next here on Locked on the Portal. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. There's also the opportunity to do it under one roof. When you start using Monarch, you're going to realize just how much spending on food delivery, on all these little things that you do are going to cost you and not save money and make the smarter and better move long term. Also, you can do that with your partner. You can manage everything and collaborate between you and your partner to set goals and stay on the same page long term without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. John, what was your first reaction when you were scrolling social media and you saw defensive lineman Cameron Brooks from Thomas County Central, Thomasville, Georgia? It's just over the Florida line for people that don't know. About 30 minutes or so, maybe 40, from Tallahassee, had picked Cal. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, I was surprised. Cal is not known for, coming across the country and recruiting the Deep South incredibly well. They are in the ACC now, so you can sell that more than you ever have out up in Berkeley. And academically, we understand that, this is one of the premier programs in the country. But still, you just expect conventionally for recruits to not only stay in their region, but, kind of lean towards those who have long been linked to them. And certainly Florida State was that in this scenario. So I was surprised like anyone else. And, our group chat at Rivals was surprised. I think, his tweet saying, hey, come out and respect this decision, it probably tells you that Cal was not only in it for longer than people realize, but certainly doing very well behind closed doors. And all of a sudden they've got 3 Thomas County Central kids on the commitment list. So it's a little bizarre. Clearly Cal's found something there in South Georgia that they're leaning on. Holding on to all 3 will be, I think, a different scenario, but you certainly, would rather win those recruitments at any point than not be a factor at all. But I do think, like you said, this is a bigger indication of what Florida State is doing or not doing, under Mike Norvell. Before they got the corner from Maryland, every kid committed was an in-state kid. We know what happened with Smeagol, who again just committed to Michigan. So you're still searching for your QB1. And simultaneously, this new group of assistant coaches that Mike Norvell has hired has been sort of up and down to this point. Official visit season is still ahead. And I think, like most programs, we'll probably see a little bit of a bump, in terms of volume and overall commitments for Florida State. But, the battles in the state of Florida that are major have been 50-50 at best for FSU. A lot of their commitments are visiting other programs, Darrell Bell, Tadarius Hughes, Karan Maycog. I mean, to come to mind immediately, they're visiting several programs, since making that Florida State commitment. So there's a real crossroads ahead, for this recruiting class. And not only trying to find that QB1, which is always important for stability, but I think just, keeping the core group together, I think is going to be, interesting for this group, because some of those guys that are on board committed to some previous assistant coaches, and they've just, held on and stuck with it through the transition, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So it's interesting to see, how long they'll be able to hold on to some of these pledges. But if you keep missing on, pipeline guys, if you keep, the border in the state of Florida, closed, but those guys are all visiting other programs. So if these trends continue in the direction that they feel like they're trending today, Florida State could be in for a rougher 26 cycle than we saw in 25. And for those who don't remember, in 25, it was a bit of a fire sale at one point. Once, Tramel Jones and some of these other guys flipped away from Florida State, they had to rebuild the class very late in the cycle. And they did a good job relative to the time they had. But it's easier said than done in a smaller window than the bulk of the 26 cycle, which we're still in the thick of. So if the trends continue, Florida State could potentially, limp into one of its lower, rated classes, not only in the Norvell era, but in the modern era. And that's just frankly unacceptable for a program with that type of prestige, those built-in pipelines, not only in the Panhandle in the northern part of the state of Florida, but certainly South Georgia, which, as you know, Brian, if Florida State is rolling, they're pulling kids from Thomas County, they're pulling kids from Valdosta, they're doing really well over the state line, in South Georgia, and those are not congruent with what we're seeing right now, trend-wise.
Agree across the board, Mr. Garcia. Florida State should not be in a scenario where they're ever, I'm not trying to be mean, but they shouldn't ever lose kids to Cal. And from what I was told, Cal put more effort into recruiting a top defensive lineman in South Georgia than Florida State.
There you go.
Allow that to sink in. Like, that's unbelievable. So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out long term with the staff and all that. And to be clear, John brought this up already, but the new staff came in December, January. they didn't have time. Like I'm not putting this on Pot Rose, Terrence Knight, and the D-line coach. He just started recruiting the kid, and he still got a chance to flip him. This is on Norvell for putting them in this position in the first place. With the last staff, had too many non-recruiters on the staff, too many guys that didn't put in the grind, and that's where we are with that. So we'll see. But a couple quick notes on Florida State. I do like they have 8 guys committed out of their 9 from in-state. Hey, that's a key for Florida State. Now they got to get some more big names down the stretch, and it's really a product of what happens this season. If they lay an egg this season, it's not going to go well. I think we all know that. Secondarily, like they got Amari Thomas, a kid from a small school in the Pan. If he was at Miami Central or if he was at STA or something, everybody know about him. That's a kid I really like. But they don't have any D-lineman commitments. Again, it would have been nice to have gotten Cameron Brooks, and they don't have a quarterback yet. Landon Duckworth, I don't think they're going to get. I thought they were going to get him at one point. And you're in a scenario this unfortunate, but right now, I don't know if they're going to get any of the. Think of a year that FSU didn't sign one of the elite kids in Georgia.
Right.
Like they're in on a bunch. Like Dexter Carter's kid is possibly like he's a.
Well, I mean, former commitment, so it's hard to get those guys back.
Yeah, it's a wild deal, but he's committed all like. I don't know, but name the last time they didn't get not just a player, they'll get somebody that's good out of that state, but they didn't get an elite player. Right now, everybody's just total wait and see mode. So I'm curious to see how these OVs go, because even if they knock them out of the park, the question is still there. How are you going to play this season? You can't answer anything because the visits happen first. I think they're going to have to try to flip kids in the fall. I could be wrong, but that's going to be a tough selling point. When we come back, we're going to talk about the receiver position, the big-bodied boundary receivers and the guys with size. Is that now a premium position? We're going to talk about that next here on the Portal Podcast. There are certain players that are just different at positions that make them marquee. Running back's not necessarily a marquee position at the NFL level, but it's still really important at college. It's not as much passing as there is in the NFL. But at the same time, if you've got a special receiver, Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, teams have to completely change what they do on every play or run the risk of getting housed. The other way to do that, not everybody's like Ryan Williams running a 10-3 or like Jeremiah running 23 mile an hour. You have to find big body guys that make special catches, contested catch, down the field. If you don't double this guy, it could go wrong. Are we seeing that becoming more of a premium position, in your opinion, John?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think wide receiver, tight end in general are creeping up to that premium position status just based on dollars, right? The value we see with these guys at the very highest of level. We've seen, in the last 3-4 years, 2 wide receiver types win the Heisman and Hunter and Devontae Smith. So I think the respect and the admittance that the wide receiver pass catcher position is a game-changing position. I think we're close. It's still premium is still, QB, trenches, corner, pass rusher. But I think if there's a potential for another spot, it's going to be opened up to one of these, game-changing, pass catchers, because is a pass-first game. I think we could all agree on now at every level, particularly at the highest level. And you look at the playoffs last year in the NFL, look at the CFP, you got to score. You got to score a lot to contend, even if you have a great defense. If you're a Notre Dame or if you're an Ohio State, you've got to score points, at the end of the day. And sometimes you got to win a shootout to get there, right? And I think we saw both programs, strut that to a degree before that national title game. Ditto for the Super Bowl matchup between Philly and Kansas City. So I think these guys just, again, they allow more margin for error, whether you're, a top end speed type of guy, or you're a bigger body who, hey, even if you're covered, you're uncovered, a Jeremiah Smith type of guy. That's something that's invaluable. I mean, look at AJ Brown, for the Super Bowl champs. I mean, you look at Ohio State. Hello, Jeremiah Smith. We just talked about him. I mean, those guys win in the margins, even if they're covered. So the analytics and some of that stuff don't really jive with that. But if you're Will Howard or if you're Jalen Hurts, or some of these quarterbacks that are dealing with pressure and a lot on the line, and you've got a guy who you could kind of just get it in the vicinity, and he's going to out rebound Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss, the guy, you feel a little bit better about it. And that's something that is everybody wants, everybody is looking for. I mean, the number one receiver in the draft, again, to go back there, was Tet McMillan. And what is he known for? The body control, the ball skills to go up and get it, even though he's a 4'5", 4'6" kind of guy, which is, an anomaly nowadays, because most of the more productive wide receivers are a little bit smaller, a little bit faster, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type guys, but there's still room for the bigger bodies because there's just so much more in the margins. And if you look at the highest level, your tight ends are creeping into those production numbers that we're used to reserving for wide receivers. I think, your Brock Bowers types, these guys are top 5, top 6 in all categories now in receiving. It's not just receptions and first downs, etc. No, it's yards, it's touchdowns. You're game planning offensively to feature bigger pass catchers more now than ever before. So yeah, I think we're getting closer to that distinction of a premium spot for those guys. I think every team has to have it, whether it's their tight end or it's your flex guy, your wide receiver, your boundary guy. You've got to have that threat presented to a defense because, again, if not, they're going to be able to concentrate on your other guys, double up your other guys, or play the run first, which is makes you one-dimensional. And that's something that nobody is going to have success with. So yeah, I think this is the group that we're going to see a little bit more of. And I think we're going to, in college this coming year, we'll probably see a lot more of it because this is a better quarterback crop than I think we just got in the NFL draft. So I think this group, you're going to see a whole lot more, prolific passing, a lot more QBs in the Heisman race. This is going to be much more of a conventional college football year because of the depth of the quarterback position. When you go Arch Manning, Klubnik, Drew Allers back another year, Ohio State and Notre Dame are going to replace with young guys that are gunslingers that are going to be very good. I mean, this group of quarterback in the sport is, I think, going to be elevated going into next year. And if they're modern, they're up to date, they're going to be using back shoulder. They're going to be pushing it down the field and winning in those same margins that these big receivers and tight ends present.
I agree across the board. Here are a couple of the kids that I think are interesting. And the reason that I brought this up, and everybody's got him labeled differently, but Julius Miles, a kid that's from a really small town in the Panhandle. Hooper, he's legit. He's a guy that's 6'5"-ish, something like that, and he can go get it. I think he was at Freeport High School. I had to look it up. Like, I lived in Florida for 7 years. I didn't know where the heck that was. But he's a kid, got Florida State visit and several other schools. You can list him as a tight end, and he might grow into it, but still the 6'3" and up guys like Tristan Keys, holy cow. He is, you and I have spoken to a great kid, Hattiesburg, committed to LSU.
Yeah, I was going to say, look at the top of the receiver rankings.
Yeah.
Chris Henry, 6'5", Sedarian Morgan, 6'4", Keys, 6'2", 6'3". I mean, there are still plenty of smaller guys that can go and that'll be highly rated. Your Naeem Burrows types, all those guys, yes. But, again, you're going to miss on the measurables at every position, and it's trickling into the pass catchers as well. And I think even down to guys like a Julius Miles, yeah, you can go find a tight end with a basketball background who just sort of looks the part, and he already has those rebounding skills that push you in between the margins there. And that's why his stock has soared even before, the spring evaluation period really opens, which just opened this week in the state of Florida. So yeah, Miles is a guy I think we're going to hear a lot more. Javar Bowden's another panhandle guy, 6'7". I mean, there's a lot of room for these type of prospects, not only, at the collegiate level, but potentially beyond if they put it all together.
Yeah, I totally agree. Calvin Russell, kid that's down South Florida, Northwestern, 6'4", 6'5". They're going to get more attention because of the wingspan and the height. There's something to work with, and as you and I have talked about many times, coaches always think they're the one that can fix it if it's a kid that has no technique. That's just how coaches work. So they'll take the piece of clay that they can mold. That's an old saying, but yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of these guys, and even somebody like Mark Bowman, who I love as a tight end, as a flex tight end. That's another thing too, because he can play inline or out. So again, big tight ends that can move around and play different spots, or just the big receivers. They are now very, very much in vogue in the recruiting ranks. John Garcia Jr., tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, real simple. Rivals.com. Meetings this week for 26 and 27. So a lot of shakeup coming in the next few weeks. So check it out.
Absolutely. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you download your podcasts on the go, whether you're going to the gym, on a drive, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, anywhere you go. And of course, on YouTube, free and available there as well. Give us a 5-star review if you're on Apple. Appreciate it. We'll see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.